Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is the 23rd part of this track from scratch Drumstep thing, which we're pretty much done. Only thing I'm doing now is we're going to go over sort of the mix of this whole thing and just call it a day, because I'm super done with this track, and a lot of people want me to move on and go do the trap from scratch. The track from scratch trap from scratch tracks. Anyway, we'll play through the whole thing, and then we'll continue. That was fun. Anyway, I'm mostly okay with this mix, honestly. I'm just kind of going to go around and make tiny adjustments where necessary. Somebody asked how the kick sidechain works, and actually the way this is working is that I'm using an envelope controller for the kick and the snare, and they are both independently triggering. This envelope gets output as a controller, which is being controlled in the sidechain by the Fruity Balance. And I'm using the Fruity Balance for two reasons. One, because you really don't want to automate the mixer faders. The mixer faders are there for you to mix, and like you can do whatever you want really, but like my suggestion is that you don't automate the faders, because then later when you're like, oh, I want the channel to be louder, or I want it to be quieter, you try moving it, you can't, because you're automating it. That means you have to change the automation, and you can do that if you want, or you can automate a secondary volume control, and then you can just have the mix faders be the thing that sets the mix. The other part about that is that the faders themselves have built-in smoothing. Everything can have smoothing if you want it to have smoothing. You go into the control linking window, and then there's just a smoothing option. You can set it, and you can do whatever. But the faders have built-in smoothing, which means that even if you have smoothing off, there's a little bit in there. And when I want to do side chaining, I want the thing to react precisely how I want it to react. You can see I have a very specific profile set up here, and I want this to actually be what it's doing. So to that end, I have to use something that has no smoothing whatsoever, which the Fruity Balance, being stupidly old as it is, has none whatsoever. So that's why I'm automating the volume control out of there. A little annoyingly, it's not actually a 0 to 100, it's 0 to 120%, which means that the default position is actually here. That's where it would be whatever gain you're putting out. But then I'm automating it fully, and like if I cared about that, I would have just automated it at that point. And then I just turn down the fader, so it's not really that big a deal, but just bear that in mind when you're doing that kind of thing. So yes, SeamlessR, are you doing viewer track reviews? I'm actually bringing those back pretty freaking soon, so be ready for that. And such. Anyway, yeah, let's do up. What am I doing? Oh yeah, mixing. So the mix is pretty alright, and I guess whatever. What do I have this Edison for? Oh. I don't need that anymore. What the hell? Hold on, the side chain is coming out. Oh wait, no, that's the master. Oh, Jesus. Confused the hell out of me. I saw this green thing, I thought it was selected, and I'm like, wait, why is the side chain independently going into my outs? Have I been doing this whole time? What would that sound like? And I was just confused. But no, that's not what's happening, which is good. I was gonna ask you a question. Okay, so I'm not using any kind of PDC right now, which is contributing to that kind of weird pre-delay sound that's happening whenever the kick and the snare hits. Because notice it's not really doing that when the synths aren't playing. So there's a teensy bit of that happening. But if I actually just engaged PDC, I'm pretty sure that would destroy everything. On the other hand, I actually kind of like how that feels. That kind of like sweep in feel. I don't do that very often. Let's just do this, see what it sounds like. Well, now it sounds right. It sounds like the correction's supposed to be. But let's compare it for a second. So this is what... This is essentially everything is aligned properly. Let's undo that. Set for all tracks. I just wanted to undo it. No. Thanks. You mean I don't have to fucking do this manually? Okay, cool. Dirt. So if you're curious about what PDC does or why it matters, plugins, effects, and whatever Routing and that kind of stuff causes latency. A teensy bit. It's usually not noticeable, but if you do a lot of it, you get a certain amount of it. And as long as it's all aligned, which is to say things are delayed the same amount, it doesn't matter, because it means that when like the kicks and the snare hit, and then like the actual synths hit, and then the synths, and then like the side chaining that I'm doing, it hits at the right time, then there's not a problem. But if there's delay and it's not being compensated for, then you get a mismatch of hits, and that's what that kind of slippery sliding into the sound like right now. Every so often you kind of hear a sound that kind of sounds like it's sliding into the snare or the kick, and that's because of that. And so the PDC does is it calculates how much latency is being created by the various plugins, and then mixer inserts that do not have latency are then delayed to have the same amount of latency to add up to whatever has the most latency. And that's different amounts of whatever, and the automatic control does that fine. And that balances out everything else to the point where that when the kick does hit, it actually hits with everything else when it's supposed to. The problem with that is that it delays everything, and then you get more latency, and then you have a bit of an issue. However, I'm just so used to hearing that like that right now that I'm actually kind of into it. I don't necessarily care. But it's good to know that I can solve that. Increase in such. People in the chat. PDC is bae, someone says. I think it's funny because I think that one effect, that one ability that Ravens have in StarCraft 2 and the Terran set is called personal PDD? Personal defense drone? Point defense drone? That's PDD, I think. I keep thinking it says PDC. It's kind of funny though. I keep seeing that in my head whenever I say PDC. Really, for this to make any sense, I had to listen to this at full volume, which means I'm going to turn the mic off, because if I listen to it at full volume with the mic on, you get feedback like you wouldn't believe. So I did something that's actually kind of interesting, and I turned on oversampling inside Maximus. You might be wondering why I did that and what that does and for what reasons and all that kind of good stuff. A gate, if cutting mixes at say 15 kilohertz gives you, it makes your waves in your MP3 sound the same. A lot of people don't necessarily actually do that, and if you're basing your analysis on what you're seeing in MP3, it's because MP3s cut everything off that high, so that's not really a thing. Although some people just don't like how it sounds because they're used to that. You get used to that, so you're not necessarily sure about, having frequencies that high up there anyway, but I don't really... What does this even say that? Like, I got a lot going on up there, which is good or bad. It's whatever. But let's talk about oversampling. So, given that we're doing everything digitally, we have to take into consideration sampling when we're doing effects that are based on level, like compression. So let's say I got a bit of track here, and if you look at the waveform, you can see all these various samples and things. So when that's what all these individual points are as samples. And the way that sampling works is that you're taking a sample of a recording every however fast the sample rate is. And in this case, it's 44.1 kilohertz, which is to say that 44.1 thousand times a second we sample with the audio coming in, and that's what ends up being recorded as the data that presents how loud it is. The sampling, there's two kinds of resolution when it comes to audio files. We get the sampling, which is sort of time-based resolution, and then there's bit depth, which is volume vertical-based resolution. And bit depth determines essentially like how many points you can have of levels and whatever. There's a lot, and the whole point of 32-bit float is that you have a whole hell of a lot more than you're used to with 24-bit, which makes 0 dB not necessarily a problem. But when we're compressing things, like if you look at this curve here, we can see the points, and then we can see the curve beneath it. In sampling, we're based on math and stuff and algorithms and that kind of thing. We can complete a line that goes through all the points. You're basically solving for a graph, the graph of the points that are present. And because of a lot of the stuff that we know, we can say there's only one solution that works, and that's why we can have perfect lines like this. That's how we know, for example, like at this point and this point, there's this curve that happens right there and then that it still manages to make these 2 points work. That's because of something called band limiting, where we're saying that we can't have particular information higher than a certain frequency. In this case, it's something called the Nyquist frequency, which is half the sample rate. Because at any given sample rate, the highest frequency you're able to produce is half the sample rate because of reasons. So given that we know that's one of the things that we can put in the equation that solves for all these points that says that we can't make frequencies higher than Nyquist. And if we change anything about this line that made it meet these 2 points at that time, it would create frequencies higher than Nyquist. So that's how that we know we can't do that. And that's how we also know that this particular solution is the only solution that makes it work between these points. Why does this matter? Well, you might notice that this point is lower than the ultimate curve that this creates. And that's a problem for compression because digital compressors are reading the sample data. They're not operating according to the actual whole line here. They're operating according to the samples as they're coming in and out and whatever. So of the sample points. So this causes something referred to as intersample peaking, which is where, like, if I were to maximize this one section here, it would bring this point up to 0 dB, but that would generate information that's higher than 0 dB, and that would cause intersample peaking. So now there's a thing called oversampling, and what oversampling does is that it reads the data and it creates more sample points in between it. So essentially, Maximus right now is running at a higher sample rate than the rest of everything else. And in doing so, it creates more points in between the 2 points here, and it has more able to determine where the real peak actually is. This is one of the benefits of analog compressors, where they don't need to do this shit because they're reading it according to the signal coming in real time forever, and that's just not a thing that they have to worry about. Of course, you might have never heard of the term intersample peaking. You might have never even noticed it ever happening because honestly, it's kind of hard to detect. It is, however, one of the things that when people like review compressors or whatever that they talk about. They talk about the intersample peaking as being a sign of quality, that kind of thing. And they're not necessarily wrong, but much like higher sample rates at all, it begs the question is whether anyone ever notices any of these changes. So that's what I did that. I did that for because I recently discovered that intersample peaking was a thing, and I wanted to see if it made it effective. And who knows if it does or not, but it's neat to be able to do that kind of thing. People talk about stuff. Sound Goodizer is good for mastering. Interesting. Yeah, okay. I probably should have slowed down when I was saying all that stuff. I don't know what's happening in chat right now. Yeah, I know about the someone asked if I knew about the different modes in Edison, and I knew about the various different modes and whatever. It was me hitting M and it didn't seem to care. Weird. Did I hit F2 by accident? No, it seems to want to name something. That's kind of odd. But I use the particular mode that I'm using in the spectral mode because it allows me to read it better than what happens in the new mode. Which, can I change the mode? The fancy mode. What? No. I tried it when it was new, and it wasn't super handy. Enhanced time, I think is what, or is it, yeah. So this is the enhanced frequency mode. And on the surface, this actually looks really, really cool because you can tell a little bit better what's going on. But then you zoom in real far and you get this shit, and it's super duper hard to actually tell where any of the harmonics are. So that's why I don't do that. Boop. This is similarly kind of hard to parse, but at particular ways, it's just easier to read. It may be because I'm used to it, but you know, that's what's up. You're gonna lander a track. Oh boy, lander. I regret that just a tiny bit. There are just some things that money shouldn't buy. Honestly, though, that kind of influenced my newer guidelines about advertising on my channel. Because I'm not going to not advertise on my channel, just so you know, because I do like money. But in the future, I'm not going to do that kind of bullshit. Yeah, so I think I'm done with this track. I don't necessarily care anymore about this track. We have 5 minutes left in the part. Who wants to have questions? Let's have questions. Play the whole track from the start. I want to hear it. I did that at the beginning. Although, I guess now I should probably play it 3 now, just because we've made changes and shit. So let's do that. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to do. I wanted to compare it to something that I know I like. And this will be a treat for you guys, because that's going to be one of my new tracks. Let's do this one, because, no, that's not related. That's not really relevant. Which one would be relevant? This would be pretty relevant. I am going to listen to it at full volume, though. That's a good balance. I actually like this one more. That's kind of interesting. I didn't think it would go that hard. Although there's differences between the tracks that makes it make sense that the other one, which is called Ammunition, by the way, is quieter, quote unquote. Yeah, okay. I'm done. This track is done. Sticking forks in it. Super done. Actually, this is great because today's Friday. Tomorrow's Saturday, and then Sunday. That stream again on Monday. This is good because that would mean that I won't have an extra video because I want to have 3 videos a day again. I want to do that again, and for that to work, I have to do tracks from scratch because that's like one whole video a day from that. But if I only do 3 parts today from that would mean it'll match up because then on Monday I'll have the next one, and I can put it on. So it's good. It's good. Plans. I like plans. Ammunition, yeah. I'm confused. This chat needs mods. Especially since CPM is less after Christmas. Yeah, that happened. I noticed that. The stats spoke true. Anyway, did I hit the end of this? 42 seconds, I just killed the timer. Yeah, so this is good. I wish. Anyway, what's happening next? The next track from scratch is going to be Trap because a long time ago I did a sub drive that if I got a certain amount of subs, that I would do Trap, and I got those subs immediately. So now we're going to do Trap, and then after Trap, I want to make a track that is 100% made with the modular stuff. Whether or not that ends up actually also being for like drums and stuff is another story because while I can make pretty okay kicks with this, snares are a different story. So we'll see how well that works out. But point being, I want to make a track that involves this a lot more than normal stuff. But I'm going to do that after Trap because I don't want to have to make that be an extra problem while I'm doing Trap. Yes. About the bobblehead. There you go. People saying you want mods. I actually got people who could be my mods that I know. I'll work into that because I'm doing streaming again. It needs to be a thing I need to be on top of. Yeah. Anyway, for those of you watching on YouTube, if you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, and as usual, have a nice day.